This call is technically oriented. It is geared towards people who are building in Rewst. You guys want to understand what we're here for, what we're doing, how you can learn a little bit more about Rewst, how you can engage, get some ideas. Trisha hit the top 4 there. Make sure you're asking questions, engaging with our support team and our education teams and your success representatives. They're all here to help you. And check out Flow. So I guess what we will do first is I am going to actually pass the mic over to George. He's got a few community updates to make, and then we will jump on.
Thanks, Ash. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we've got a couple of exciting little initiatives I just wanted to share with all the folks on the call live, and for anyone who's listening in the future. You may have seen earlier this week a new little video pop up around community creations, and also some posts in Discord about this project. Community creations is essentially trying to create small little snippet videos. Think of kind of like the new TikTok brain that so many people have, that are specifically dedicated for Rewst 101 type workflows or even sub workflows. The idea being that we have a lot of new partners when they come on, get very, very excited about all the cool things that Rewst can do. And sometimes, I always compare it to Lego. People want to jump into building the Death Star or Hogwarts Castle straight away. And that can be a bit of a daunting task. You can get quickly overwhelmed. And so this approach is say, hey, why not start by building this little Lego man? You put the head on the body and you put the legs on the body. There you go. Now build 2 or 3 Lego men. You've got a little Lego family. Great. So some people have already signed up to do some super straightforward videos. I met with Rod earlier today. Thank you for your time, Rod. Elliot, Reese, lots of other people, Hans, as I mentioned, have already got videos filmed with me. I will drop a link in the chat for anyone who wants to book some time. And ultimately, it'll take 10 minutes, and it's just if you're someone who has a super simple workflow that you think would benefit a Rewst newbie, we would love to hear from you. So some of the ones we've had in the past already are server maintenance notifications, password resets. Rod did a pretty cool one on pulling some specific data from one place to another today within Central. So yeah, would love to hear from you guys and just help showcase some basic functionality within Rewst to new folks. If anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat, let me know, or DM me on Discord. The other initiative that we just kickstarted today, Ash and I had our first ever business leaders focus group, which was super exciting. So we had this call, regularly gets over 100, 150 people, where we can come and talk a lot about the cool technical things in Rewst. The idea of the business leaders focus group is if you're someone who is an MSP owner or a senior staff member at that MSP, and is maybe more interested in sort of the business outcomes of around automation. So things like ROI, how you're implementing it, how to kind of engage in that, creating that culture of automation. We're doing some focus groups where MSP business leaders can gather to share knowledge, collaborate, ask questions, in a more of a focus group setting. So again, if there's anyone who is on the call or is watching this in the future, feel free to reach out to me on Discord or smith.george@rewst.io to get in touch, and we'll get you connected with some other like-minded folks who are super eager to chat and collaborate on all things automation. And that's it from me.
Thank you, George. All right, so now we are we're not going to be having a dev or a marketplace update today. Bunch of people are traveling, as I mentioned. So we're going to jump right over to Brandon for our education update.
All right. Happy Friday, everyone. How's everybody doing? I love that wonderful silence when everybody's muted, but they're shaking their head or nodding or telling me while muted that they're doing really well. So good to hear it, everybody. Glad to hear you're all doing so well. Glad to be back. All right, we have some quick education updates today. So first, before I dive into this, for my game tip or game thoughts or whatever we want to call it for today, Suikoden or Suikoden or however you say that, if you know how to say that linguistically, just go ahead and put that in the chat for me so I can correct that in all of my content. 1 and 2 HD Remaster just came out today, and those games are awesome. And also, if you were ever interested in playing those games on the PS1, they're ridiculously expensive. So getting it physical now is just going to be good for your collection. And then we also have Xenoblade Chronicles X coming out next week, and there's a bunch of other really cool stuff to do as well. If anybody is interested in checking out Expedition 33 as well, which is like a JRPG coming out that's like Lost Odyssey. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay. There's like 10 of us that love that game. Then there's some really cool stuff on YouTube as well from some of my content creator buddies where they've covered it. They got to play a 3-hour demo and they got to talk about it. And it's looking real good. So check that out as well. Okay, now to the more important stuff. Shout outs to Jeff, Kevin, Sergey, Blake, Ben, Brennan, Giles, Rod, Alina, and Ryan for passing the foundation certification. They took the foundation certification exam and they'll be getting their prestigious certified Rooster badge in Discord, along with access to our super secret channel. Also, shout outs to Brian. I see you, buddy. Also, shout outs to Mark, Rami, Charles, and Michael for passing the clean automation certification. You guys will also have access to that super secret channel, and you'll be much better at automating. So for those of you who are new, definitely check out our CollectU content as well as those certifications. It should be no surprise, but those who invest the most in our education content are the most successful. So definitely take a look at that. If you have any questions for us, we have a number of other ways you can get in contact with us. You can check us out at the CollectU Discord channel, ask any questions you'd like. We do have office hours as well on Thursdays with the legendary Eddie Chow. And as we've mentioned the last couple of weeks, we're going to be switching up our training schedule a bit to provide more time per week to the Foundation series, as well as doing a boot camp for the clean automation. So we'll have a weekly Foundation series starting on March 10th, which is next week. So get signed up for those, and we can send you some links in the chat here shortly. As far as documentation updates this week, we have quite a few. So we have updated the documentation or document Rewst form URLs crate. That's for IT Glue and Hoodoo. We've updated the troubleshooting steps for the ConnectWise Screen Connect integration. We have SureWeb integration setup documentation updates, the ad hoc install and uninstall software via Chocolatey Crate. That Chocolatey? Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Triage Sentinel-1 threat alerts crate content, as well as updates to the instructions for the ad client to Rewst crate. So we doing a lot of work on making sure we have our crate integration and other documentation updated. There's a lot of stuff coming, and we will keep you guys updated.
Chocolatey works now, you're saying?
Chocolatey is documented, is what I'm saying. Everything else.
Because you know it's broken right now, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
All right.
So
Sure.
I thought you were giving me an update that it got fixed. We found that there was an issue with it, and it really shouldn't even be published right now. So,
all right, we'll
Thank
take a look. Thanks for the feedback, Rod. Appreciate it. Back to you, Ash.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, so now we are actually going to jump into our first demo, and we're going to have a little bit of preamble here. So, you know, some of the things that have been coming up, there's been conversation in the CyberDrain Discord and in the Rewst Microsoft and a few different places just about, like, you know, Microsoft is always making rapid changes and then releasing new licensing models, and there's just a need for understanding a lot of this automation around that. So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let Kelvin talk about it, and then John is going to demo us an example.
I almost spoke to a muted microphone again, but I stopped myself. Did anyone notice? I should be applauded for that. Hey everyone.
I noticed.
Thank you, John. So this is another of those 1-2 presentations that I think it was Tanner and Gareth that did it last time. I love it so much that I'm just giving you guys the business spiel, and John is going to show you guys the actual workflow. So let me share some stuff. Let me share my screen right now. Window, Google Chrome, and then we're gonna start with Reddit. So you should all be seeing this beautiful, beautiful Reddit page. Today we're going to be talking about P1. Specifically, Microsoft starting to audit every single tenant that is using or at least abusing P1 licensing right now. Microsoft has announced officially that they are going to audit every single tenant that is using the P1 activation trick. Let me clarify that. If you buy a single P1 license, it activates for the entire tenant. That means what many people did is activate a single P1 license and then use that for 100, 200, 300 users because they got access to conditional access and all of these kind of things. The thing is, the rule in those specific licenses, in the license agreement itself, it says you must license any user that benefits from this service. Benefiting from the service means if a conditional access policy is applied to the user, but even grabbing a report of risky sign-ins or grabbing a report of what MFA methods are configured. It is currently possible still to do this, but Microsoft has a blog that they published saying, hey, we're introducing Enter License Insights, where you actually see in the portal how under-licensed you are. Microsoft is using this report to directly contact your client. They're not going through you. They are sending certified letters, like this guy got. He got caught doing this. They are sending certified letters to your client, not as a Microsoft vendor, but as Microsoft themselves with a lawyer saying like, hey guys, you are currently in breach. You have 90 days to get onto par. Otherwise, we are shutting off your tenant with no way of accessing that data ever again. They are being very strict in this. So far, Microsoft has announced they audited almost 30,000 tenants. They want to have every single tenant, or 300,000 tenants. They want to access or assess every single tenant by end of this year. Now, you won't get in trouble if you have 1 or 2 missing P1 licenses. They won't be like, oh, we're going to shut off your tenant in that case. But they are going to eventually say like, hey, you have 100 P1 licenses, or you're using 100 P1 licenses and you're only having 1 license. Come on, this is bizarre. This shouldn't do this. So they send a 90-day certified letter, a warning to your client directly, not to use the CSP. Then they email the CSP as well. Then after 30 days before, they warn you one last time saying, we're going to shut this off. After shut off, they have no more way of accessing the data. They can only request a deletion, which is really important. So that's the business side of these things. And of course, you have to make sure that you get up to par with licensing before Microsoft start sending these letters to you. And for that, the wonderful John, I'll stop sharing my screen in a second. There we go. Stop sharing. I just stopped sharing my screen. So John can now show you the workflow that we've created that uses the Graph API to get these reports and tell you how screwed you are, to say the terms of that specific Reddit post.
Yeah. So this is the workflow that we came up with. It's pretty straightforward. Just goes through your orgs, and then it runs a sub workflow to run this report that Microsoft has so helpfully provided. I borrowed this functionality from what we have in SIP currently, thanks to, I think Bobby wrote this one, didn't he?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So we call this endpoint here, this Azure AD Premium License Insight for every tenant, and then we bring that back into the main workflow. We do a little with items aggregation, do some license math, and then send a report. I'll just show what it looks like first, and then we can go over it. This one does take a minute because it does have to query a bunch of orgs really fast. And the demo gods are kind today. Well, minus the sending the report CSV, but that's because our tenant isn't licensed for it. So it's just going to fail to do that, and it's finished. Okay, so I'll go back and I'll show you guys what the math looks like, because this is the fun part. That's right, I used this thingy. So this is some really fun Jinja that I didn't have to write thanks to Ash's Roosty Jinja Ninja bot. I gave it some payload information and said, hey, I need a report. And then it gave me this. So what we're doing is we're basically just summing up all the license counts. In this case, we're also adding P1 and P2 for the P1 license, just to show that P2 is covered in P1. And that's part of the percentage, which is very helpful. We found that when we ran this in SIP, it wasn't doing that math automatically, and certain people, I'm not going to name any names, but had a very, very high overage percentage because they had a bunch of P2 licenses, but not P1 licenses, and it was not accounted for. So when this is all finished, it does, well, I can't show you guys the actual report that it prints out because CSVs don't render properly, but what is it, this one? License report. So this is it. We ended up with 3 of our dev tenants that had details. You can see we have 25 licenses. They're actually all E5, so they include P2. We're only using 6.8% of the P1 feature, licenses. So even though we have P2, we're not even using any of the P2 features. The most we have is my dev tenant with 10%. So that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to it, but you could basically take this data, and then if you're above 100%, you can start, telling people, hey, maybe we need to buy more licenses. Or if you're like way, way, way over, like in the 4,000% range, for real, not just because we didn't do the math right, then yeah, you might have to worry about something in the future.
Kelvin, can I ask us a quick question on that? Because this is very topical with like a lot of MSPs, work in M365. It's the most popular application in the world. And I think a lot of people have known about this little cheat code for a while. And so to your point, there's probably some people that need to go and buy some more licenses. Or would you have any recommendations, or how are you seeing other MSPs handle this, not only from an internal thing, but also like communicating it with their clients? Because obviously it's a cost that you have to add on to maybe some things that are already a little slim on margin with Microsoft.
So I'm going to be entirely honest here. We've done this. My MSP has done this. We found out a couple of weeks ago when we were auditing it using the new component that Bobby created for us inside of SIP. Like John said, it's the same script. And we figured out that one of our account managers actually did the same. And I think the only answer is that you're going to have these hard conversations anyway, because you were actually cheating the system. And I mean, you're just confronted with the reality now that now they are checking it. That's the only difference. Yes, slim margins are an issue. It's also a good moment to upsell people to Business Premium. It might even be the perfect moment to upsell people to Business Premium, because you can keep messing around with having different kinds of SKUs and trying to trying to convince your client, hey, you might need a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They don't. They need everything. So just use Business Premium. It is the best SKU around.
But what if they just want to buy their licenses for permanent, perpetual Office licensing?
Then they no longer need to be your client. and that is a reality that a lot of MSPs, especially smaller MSPs, they don't have the luxury of saying that. They don't have the luxury of saying, I don't want you as a client if you're not going to follow the rules. But there's so much benefits for them as a business to actually do it too, that actually Brian Simpson just had posted a link by Nick Ross that is brilliant and explains it very well on how easy it actually is to upsell to Business Premium just for the business value. So I guess that's my answer, George. You'll have to be confronted with it, and you'll have to start doing it. It sucks as an MSP. It sucks, but yeah.
I'll add on a little bit too to what Kelvin said. So we had a lot of this same discussion with some of our clients recently, and not only that, we went even beyond just the P1, but with the P2, and just laid out, here's what you're going to gain and here's what you're going to lose with not getting into compliance. We're finding that we have had actually something like 80% of our clients still opt to either wholly just outright purchase P2 licenses, even on top of Business Premium, or have accepted that they're at least going to put them on to higher risk, like their decision makers, their CEOs, their executive suite office, and then allow the P1 features in Business Premium to be sufficient for the rest of the users. And we're able to then target those policies then in a much smarter scope. That way they're in compliance.
Does anybody else have any other questions before we move on? If not,
hey, Kelvin,
thank
can you provide the link to the Microsoft blog that you showed?
I think someone posted it already, but I'll make sure that we post it again.
The link to the Reddit, I think, was posted. Yes, Daniel.
Yeah, it was just a Reddit, not the actual blog.
Yeah, so I got a quick question. I mean, it's not Rewst, but you said it was in SIP. Is it already in SIP, or is that coming in a future release?
It's in the alerts, a scripted SIP alert. Let's not talk about SIP during open mic.
I know.
I tried to make, like, I was focused on using the graphics, guys.
All right, so let us move on. We are going to, Brandon, I think you said we're doing live debugging?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Let me pull up things here. So I am doing a lot of work with table storage, trying to get information in and out between what needs to happen for documenting workflows as they run, and then also information for like migrations and stuff. So two challenges for that. First one is batching requests out to send multiple sets of information into table storage without having to send a single request for every single one. And then the second one is when you're using the table APIs, it is wanting a storage access token. What you could do, and what it does right now with the stock workflow, is it will just ask you to generate one in Azure and put it in there. I don't like having keys lying around, or we don't have keys lying around. So instead, what I want to do is figure out a way to craft these storage access tokens on the fly and then sign them with an actual legit token. So if for whatever reason they do get ripped out of the org variables, even though there's a secret, you can go into the context editor and just do CTX secret and it pops it right out. It's useless because we've already done what we need to do with it and it doesn't exist anymore. So first part of it is done. We are able to send batch requests to update multiple different items here. The very keen-eyed of you will notice that you will see some storage tokens in this. This is for our lab tenant, and they will be rotated by the end of the call. If you feel so inclined to screw around with it during the call, I would encourage you to please not. But if you're coming back to this later on, they won't work for you.
Are you sharing? Because we don't see
I am not yet. No, I'm just
okay.
Pulled up here. Yeah.
It sounded like you said, you were saying, look here, and I'm going, I don't see it.
There will be. Okay. So this is a very basic workflow. This is kind of our initial proof of concept of it. But when you are wanting to batch data out through a table, there is a specific type of requesting you to send for a group entity transaction. Sorry to go from dark mode to light mode for everyone. But essentially, you're going to be hitting this endpoint here for the batch request. So your account name, table Windows.net / batch. From there, you're going to send a multi-part MIME message containing the batch and change sets. So the batch is going to be a randomly generated GUID. So it's a change set, and this is just going to set boundaries for, this is the information I'm sending. Here's the next change, here's the next change, here's the next change. Okay, now we're done with this batch. So what this looks like here is we have a requested batch of table data. The input I'm expecting to put into it is just a array of objects. So we have the method on there, and then the data we're going to post in a JSON format. To get this out, let me move this little thing over here. We are having this Jinja here, so we're defining the batch ID, the change set ID for the boundary, and then for data and batch data, we are just saying, here's change set ID. It's going to be the same since it's the same set of batch data. The method, table URL, table name, and then the data we're going to put out there stringified. And then we're going to loop for that every single one, and then we're going to end the change set. So if the demo gods smile upon me, this one has data that I can safely post in there. So let's try this again. This is our dev table. It is empty. This is the one that should work. Ooh, we failed. Why did we fail? This is the live debugging. This is me changing stuff. Untype is iterable. Fun. Yes, Holden. Yeah. I think we are missing some data here. Let me do this. Rather than fuss around with the specific Jinja formatting, let's go ahead and cheat a little bit just to kind of show the API working, and then we'll roll back to this when we're done. First up of everything is prove it's possible. So we know this is good data. I can come back and fix my Jinja later. No, still no. Invalid URL. All right, none. Oh, it helps if I give it table name and URL. Welcome to the live debugging. It's happening a little bit sooner than we thought it would. This is the normal course of action for working in Rewst for me. I know it's a lot of times we'll see these calls and people are just flying all the way through and like, look at all this cool stuff. But in reality, it's a lot of trying, hitting a wall, trying, hitting a wall, trying, hit a wall until finally we get a 202. And in our get table data, we should now have a batch of the data. Same here. So I believe you can do up to 100 at once. So you will need to do a little bit of chunking if you're updating stuff in significant amounts of bulk. Don't quote me on that. I'm just kind of calling off the top of my head what I think I remember seeing here on limits. But this is a significantly easier way to deal with batch data. You can do most entity group transactions as Kelvin specified. It's the row. Oh, yeah, cool. I did it right. 100 is right. Yeah. So you can batch it out. You would essentially have some Jinja there to split it out. But I want to see why this didn't work the first time. So we're going to use the cool rollback feature and see what this looks like. Is this the right one? No, that's the one where I actually wrote it in. How about this one? Revert to here. That's the one. Publish. Reverted to patch. Yes, Kelvin is right. Table storage is fast. Okay, so I'm going to do something where I put this on the right side of my screen. This might actually display what's in my background, and I did not properly prepare by sanitizing what's behind here. So I'm just going to do this manually. We're going to pretend we're on a Mac without Windows snaps, because it's thinking different or something. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at this format. Oh, wow, that is ugly. Could I make this a little bit whiter? Okay, we'll figure this out. There we go. As I'm doing this on these live debugs, I don't really have much of a script. So if anyone has questions as I'm going about this, please feel free to just unmute and shout them out. So let's take a look at what this batch data is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out our context body here. We're going to open this up. We're going to paste that in. All right. So this is more of a formatting thing. I don't think this would be an issue, but I have some white space being stripped off here that probably shouldn't be. Let's try that again. Okay, so we have our preamble. After that, we're going to go batch, content type, multi-part mixed, boundary. There's our change set, content type application HTTP, content transfer encoding binary, host, one, accept application JSON, minimal metadata, prefer, return no context, data safe version 3, partition key. Okay. Next item and change set. Next item and change set. And when we're done, yeah, that should be right. Maybe I had an input issue. The batch ID and the change ID, they don't have to be anything particular. I'm defining it up front because you do need to put in the header of the request what your batch is, so it's able to correlate stuff back and forth, but I'm just generating batch underscore and then a random UID 4. And then from there, we are including that in our content type here to match, so boundary batch, and then also in our output here. But let's see if maybe it just didn't like that white space stripping. So I'm going to publish this. Rather than test it, I'm actually going to go back to our execution summary here and rerun this because I know that that is there. And before I do that, let me clear out the data that we put here. Okay. Cool. Batch table data. It says 202. That's a lie sometimes. Batch response. It did get a batch response, but it didn't actually do anything. Yeah, it does that. 202 you would think is like, okay, cool, it's good, but then actually it means we've received the batch. Doesn't actually mean the batch finished. There is another endpoint I believe you can hit that like checks on the status of it, similar to if you're deploying an Azure resource, but table storage is so blazing fast, it's easier just to see, is it there yet, basically. Okay, so let's do a diff check on the data that I know is in good state. And we'll pull that over from over here. Diff checker, text compare. All right. So we'll put what we get out of Rewst in our change text, and then I have a VS Code window open with the original one that did work, and we know worked. And I'll just strip off white space, find a difference. So we have different batch and boundary IDs, that's expected. So it doesn't look like we have any formatting changes here. Oh, Matt says he sees why. Please help me, Matt.
I'm so sorry. I was referring to my licensing situation. No.
Oh, okay. I was like, someone saw something I didn't. Okay. So what I'm looking for here is the things we see expected to be changed are changed. We have a different batch ID, we have a different change set ID, and that's really it. The only difference is the JSON is in a different order, but I wouldn't think that matters.
Was there just a delay? Is it there now?
No. This is the fun part where I stare at it for like 20 minutes and then I move on, and I'm gonna wake up at like 3 in the morning and just bolt out of bed and be like, there's white space somewhere. There's a non-breaking space character in this.
We have a way to capture those. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does show. It should show in the Monaco editor, like some sort of highlight for when there's something that shouldn't be there.
I'm going to ask you a question. Just more. This is more of a curiosity thing, not saying of right or wrong, because I started doing stuff before with table data, And like I was working with a lot of data and obviously using the built-in workflow for it and having to do each line one by one, the stuff I was doing was going to take hours to do. I'm just kind of curious as to, like, you seem to be putting a lot of work into this to be able to do it in batches. What's the advantage to table storage that you really want to use that rather than another storage that would be easier to set up the batches?
Yeah. So table storage for me kind of hits the trifecta of IT goodness of fast, cheap, and simple. I know this doesn't look simple right here, but once we get the batching figured out, this is kind of going to be it. I'm familiar with table storage in the context of a project called SIP. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, but they use that pretty heavily. So when I'm working in there and doing stuff on that, I'm used to seeing that go back and forth. But table storage is incredibly cheap and incredibly efficient at what it does. It's not a turnkey solution for all of the things, but when you are trying to store a large amount of unstructured data in a way that's fast and easy to recall, it is a easy thing for me to go about and get going. You don't have to worry about any overhead for like hosting servers or partitions or anything. It's just the amount of data you store is charged as a normal storage account, so it's fully consumption based as well. So when I'm doing these things,
I'm just curious because to me it came to, it's like, oh my God, this is just too much work for me. So I went to what was simpler to do. And yes, like I went to a SQL server because it's going to be costing me about $15 a month for it. But to me, it made it a lot easier. So I'm just more curious because I know not everything, I'm not saying one thing's better than the other, but I see a lot of work that you're putting into here because like when I was trying to do this, I thought that it wasn't even possible to do batch updates into table storage. So it is interesting that there is actually a way to do it.
And everyone's going to have something that's going to be easier for them, right? I'm sure you have some background in SQL or managing those types of databases before. So
Not a lot.
For you, yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's in your use case, that's a valid way of going about it. I'm more familiar with the serverless side of Azure, so that's the kind of cool thing about these calls is like everyone has a different way of going about it, and they might get the same end result. It's just like what is your preferred method of doing it? And when I'm trying to do these, this is kind of a good segue into a conversation about scoping effort, putting into workflows. This is a sub workflow that once we get this up and running is going to be very, very significantly repeatable. We have a lot of uses for table storage at the moment. Some of it is not running as efficient as batch queries, but we're using it in our team spot, we're using it in some migration scripts. And being able to reuse this not just for a single thing, but for any sort of need for storing structured data outside of the org variables, as much as I do enjoy misusing or abusing org variables as a database when I shouldn't. This is a lot more of a scalable thing. So it's like, yes, I would normally want to not put more than a couple hours of work into this and go to something that may be predefined if it is available, but it's kind of considering also this is going to be very, very easy to continue to use and reuse, not just for what our current goals are, but also future goals as well.
This would be some work that would be kind of nice if Rewst could add this to the current tables workflow to add an option like this on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they're interested, I'm happy to share the batch table stuff with them specifically. I don't have a problem with that, but. Yeah, okay, so we're getting a 202, and our data when we're checking diff is the same. Besides, the only difference I could see is the order of the JSON shouldn't matter. There's a space in there in our original one that we did have working. Let me just make sure I'm pasting out the right thing. E40 is our batch ID, yeah. All the way down to our final change set, having the double. Actually, this batch doesn't have a terminator on it right here. I'll bet you that's what that is. It's never being told that this is the end of the content I'm sending. Kelvin says I froze for him perfectly. Teams has a very, very unique ability to find the most unflattering thumbnails for my recordings, where I'm like mid-talking, one eye is halfway shut, the other one's like looking up in the top right corner. Yep, those are exactly what they look like. I appreciate these likely going to be turned into new emojis, both in our internal teams and some Discord servers I'm in. Yep, there you go. Thanks, Alden. Okay, let's try this. That's our batch data. We have migration data. We have our table URL. We run. There we go. Very nice reference, Nolan. Speaking of Nolan, if you didn't know, there is a new Spirit Box album and a new Architects album that came out today, which is very exciting. Anyway, get table data. Still nothing.
Hey, Brandon, now your screen is frozen too. Before it was just you, now your screen is as well.
He may have done something that crushed him. Let's see if Rhys comes himself back in here.
I'm just going to use the joke that was in the chat right now. The Microsoft auditors must have gotten to Brandon.
I think it's Aaron in the background. All right. I'll just give him 1 second, and then if he doesn't come back, like I said, I've got something else that we can jump into for some time here. What's everybody's thoughts on this type of format, though, with like the live debugging, the discussion, like the going through everything? Is it interesting? Is it too much? People love it.
I would say I like it.
Cool.
It's kind of good to see other people
Information
struggle
is,
with the same things.
Too powerful to disclose to the rest of the world, according to Microsoft, apparently.
You made it back.
Yeah, I'm back. We can continue on poking at this, or Ash, I know you mentioned you had something that you might want to show off too. I don't want to spend too much time ramming my face into this, but next week I will have the answer.
Okay, well, people are loving it. I can show off my thing quickly just because it's a little bit topical, and then if you want to jump back in, or if you have any insights, we can jump back over to that.
Cool.
All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So this is a test that I was doing. I was trying to see whether I actually needed an e-commerce site if I had the functionality and platform to use my tools in a more headless way, and then allow to kind of build up our own stuff, because, you know, like AI is allowing you to do a lot more now, and we can kind of be a bit more versatile in what we thought that we could or couldn't do. So I was like, let's just start with a basic test on this. So Gelato, if you don't know, they're a print-on-demand company for like swag and stuff like that. And when you're on this is the back end of Gelato or your dashboard, you can set up a bunch of different storefronts. Your main options are things like Shopify, Etsy, BigCommerce, and I was like, I don't really want any of that. They have an API. You can set up a manual store, and so it's like, all right, let's try that. So I set up a store, like a manual store, and I was looking at their API, and it's like, okay, well, they have this ability in the e-commerce section to do a list products, get products. I was like, I can figure this out. I've been playing with Superbase as a backend for a lot of things, and if any of you aren't familiar with it, it's pretty powerful, and you can do a lot on their free version for just holding backend storage, and not only that, but also edge functions and stuff like that too, so that you can have somewhere to go. So what I've actually done here is I was like, I just want to submit into a database. So kind of similar, like I had AI help me create an edge function within Superbase. It was pretty straightforward, but not straightforward, but because you can use tools like Cursor or any other like Claude AI to help you communicate and integrate with different things, and with MCP functionality, it basically tells you everything that you need to know about, doesn't tell you everything, it already knows everything that you need to know. So there's so many options out there, but I just have this function here, and it has an API endpoint. I don't care if you guys want to submit stuff to my test database, you can see that, but it just has an endpoint URL, and then it tells you how to invoke it. So I just figured I was going to use that. So let's just start with, on my sample, I wanted to be like, all right, so I know that I can find the store, the products that are in a store. Within my sample store, I put a beanie. And it's like, all right, I should be able to get that back. And so then I put the store ID in, calling the products endpoint. This is just a test right now, so I'm just using the regular HTTP request, but I just needed to give it the API key for now. And then I told it based on the response that I got, and we can look at the response, but the way that I realized that things were set up was the product comes in, but then each individual product has kind of like a variant. So it's like if you have a size, that's a variant within the product. And so I needed to handle those. And then I realized that like pricing is actually associated with the variants too. So this product UID is what you need in order to get pricing information back from the API. So I just used a JSON path query, which is my favorite filter in the entire world, to look for every single variant sub-workflow, not sub-workflow, sub-object nested, and then return that. Basically saying like, I don't care what product it is, if it's got a variance nested object, I want those back. And then I have a sub-workflow, which I was actually talking to Kelvin while I was building this, and I'm like, actually stop, I'm going to make this a sub workflow to begin with. And he was like, well, why don't you just put the task on there right now? We're just testing. And I was like, I will never take it off. So I was like, it's only 3 tasks. I'm just going to start right away, sub workflow this. And it's literally like all it's doing is it's receiving. So the way I created this, I just made sure that it took the input configuration and that it had an output to return. And so all I'm doing is grabbing the, sorry, Matt, I'm just gonna mute you there. All I'm doing is grabbing the information that comes in on the sub workflow for that product UID and calling the pricing endpoint, and then telling it that I want it to return that data back, basically, as the output. And so then on my main workflow, this is where I use one of my other favorite things, which is the append with items transform. So I don't like navigating through returned results on sub workflows. It's one of the most complicated things. I just can't wrap my head around it sometimes, even though it's super simple once you get it. So this is one of my favorite things, because I just say, here's the list that I gave to the sub workflow originally when I started to do the worth items. And here's like what was returned from that sub workflow. And here's what I want you to append that data into that original object as to return. And you can see what these are doing right here when you come in and look at this template string. This is all that that's doing, is it's just coming through and it's doing this. So if you wanted to use that or modify it or whatever as your own custom Ginger template, you can, but it's just there for you. And then I have a different transform that does this, but I was trying to play with what it was needing and how it was needing to work. But I was like, just give me a flattened list of this information so that I can input it into my table. And so this data, we'll see it when I look at the result, but it's just pulling the sub price information out and product. And that won't work so well when I have multiple variants. So I'm going to have to change that, but just so that you can see my quick test, what I was doing to get that data out, because I know that I just have the one. So I'm also not monitoring the chat. So if you guys are asking questions, just interrupt me. So that's running. As you can see, it got the store ID. It returns that. You don't care about that. It's fine. And then it gives me back the product, all the product information, additional metadata, and then here's that variant. And so then when I set this variable, this is where I was telling it to pull back just the variant, to pull back just the specific variants. So this is just that one section that the JSON path query pulled out for me. And then that's when I plugged into the sub workflow. So that goes off, it gets the price, comes back. And then this is the with items results, my initial array, the array that returned, and my base list that was given to it. And this is pretty cool. So this is how it works. It comes back, it gives me the price details, and it's automatically appended into my original result. And so it's not very pretty. It's just got all the data in there. So then that's where I structured the list here to be flattened. But as you can see, it's got like a weird duplicating list thing. So I just had it flatten that in another one separately down. And you can see it's just got a flatten on it just because I didn't want to do any logic in the actual call. So you can see that. And then this core HTTP request was the one for calling the Superbase backend. And as you can see, it says product price submissions inserted successfully. So I can go back to that, look at my table editor, look at those price submissions. There's the data right there. And I was maybe, I think it took me 25 minutes to make this workflow. Biggest thing that takes me time is trying to like overcomplicate to begin with. When I actually try to think about it one piece at a time, I get that simple, straightforward use case, and now I have a functional example. And that functional example can help guide me as I'm enhancing it to accommodate other things as well. And that's what I wanted to show.
Cool.
Anybody have any questions for me?
Just got it working, so if there are no questions, I will
Yeah.
show you. So I had a little goodie left over from my initial debugging with the thing that I was pasting in that was totally working still. In my header, if you actually clicked it open, this boundary still had the old batch ID hard-coded into it from when I was testing the actual structure of the call. So I was telling it, you're going to expect to have a boundary with this GUID, and it was just never finding one with that. So if we go back here, we can see there's no data. We can see our input here is going to be the batch data. This can be in any format with any method. So if you're doing a put, you can do that to update an entity. But we can go ahead and rerun this. The roosters on the hamster wheels are running very fast at the Rewst HQ right now. There we go. We have batch table data. If we go to get table data, we now have valid data in that table. All right. And with that, we should be able to add any other entity types if you're unfamiliar with table data. So really quick, as far as unstructured data services in Azure, there is also Azure Cosmos DBs, which is very similar in its kind of theory of it. Table data is limited to the specific OData types. Azure Cosmos can also handle like documents and stuff if you're putting it in there. So if you want something a little more extendable, then you would probably want to go with Cosmos, but you have the option to add strings, bools, date times, doubles like floats, GUIDs, integers, and binary data into the table storage by default here. So therefore, anything that you want to put in within that, as long as you have the OData tag type on the table data you're putting in through the list array here, you should be able to also add it next to the row key and partition keys. So, hooray. Next challenge, craft storage access tokens. And there is a super cool Jinja filter for doing HMAC signing. So I should be able to do that on the fly as well. That's it, right on time.
It was a very unintentional tabling and storaging event.
Yeah. I also can no longer have access to the chat for some reason. So if anyone has asked questions in the chat, I can't see it.
Oh, your name says unverified too. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions for Brandon, make sure to pop them into Discord. Normalize Discord. It's never too late to say that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week. And if you're in Canada and you're in its March break next week, have fun with your kids.
Meow. See y'all.
Meow, meow.
Meow, meow.